Senator from Charleston, Senator Campsen is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think y'all won't be surprised that what I want to lead off with is James Madison in Federalist Paper 51, in which he explains why the framers created the federal government and structured it the way it did. And they got it right. Because what the framers did and their vision was to diffuse political power and not concentrate it. They had experience from England and from Greece and from Athens. They realized that human beings needed to be governed, but because they needed restraint. We are made in God's image and capable of great good, but also capable of great evil. And so what do you do with a creature like that? You got to create laws and institutions that promote the good and restrain the evil. And that's exactly what the framers did in the Constitution, because the number one principle that they adhered to was to diffuse political power, not concentrate it. They knew that concentrated political power would ultimately be abused. They had learned that through the lessons of history, and they got it right. They got it better than any other nation on earth in the manner in which they structured our Constitution, premised upon the reality of human nature. And I think Federalist 51 is the Federalist paper that most clearly articulates this. I'll read it in part. They said, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. It may be a reflection on human nature that all such devices should be necessary to control the abuses of government. But what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls of government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige government to control itself. And that, men and women of the Senate, is what the framers used, that device of separation of powers, to make sure that power was not abused, that it was diffused, and therefore no one branch of government or no one level of government would be able to accumulate too much power because the other branches had means to keep it in check. What are those means? First, it's federalism. And we play a big role in the Federalist architecture. Federalism is where you provide political power is invested at certain levels of government and not in others. It's how we came up with, the framers came up with both a federal and a state system. That's federalism. Under federalism, we, the state legislature, has authority to operate elections. It's called the Elections Clause. The time, place, and manner of elections are vested with us, in the U.S. Constitution. That's why we do redistricting. That's why we pass laws about whether early voting, we control over when early voting can happen, who can return a absentee ballot for someone else. All of these laws occur, and they're adopted by the 50 states. And we also have separation of powers, another diffusion of power at both the state and the federal level. We diffuse that power between the legislative branch and the judicial branch and the executive branch. And we further diffuse power among the legislative branch in almost every state in the country. I think Nebraska excluded, and maybe one other. You further diffuse the legislative power among the two branches, or the two chambers of the Senate and of the House, because the framers felt like that the legislative branch needed extra, they thought we were problem children, I guess, or needed remedial provision, which you separate the power between the House and the Senate. And so the elections and how we conduct elections is largely up to us. Now, Congress has issued legislation in that area, but by and large, it's up to us. And I think that's really important, because we are getting asked from the federal government, not the state government, and the executive branch, not the legislative branch, to adopt a reapportionment plan in a matter of days. And I was very involved in the reapportionment plan that we adopted and have been working under for the last several years, since 2022, I think it is. I was very involved in that. I was a witness at the trial. That went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and we won. And that whole process took from January 26th of 2022 to May in 2024. It took that amount of time to both craft that bill, get it passed into law, and defend it in federal court. And we're at being asked to do this in a matter of days. That's really not possible, to do something like this accurately in a matter of days. And we had the senator from Ori had already indicated untold numbers of meetings around the state, getting input. This is how you put together a congressional plan. Getting input from citizens around the state, communities of interest, of how they think that the maps should be drawn. And yet we're being asked to do this in just a matter of days. And this is what's happened elsewhere in the country. California enacted a map, but they produced that map 285 days before the primaries. We're not 285 days away from our primaries. Florida, their map, 160 days before the primaries. Missouri, 310 days before the primaries. North Carolina, 132 days. Ohio, 186 days. Tennessee, 91 days. Texas, 186 days. Utah, 260 days. South Carolina, 14 days. 14 days before early voting starts. In-person early voting. 14 days. It's almost impossible for us to even pull this off. Not without a tremendous amount of error being added in. And what if we do? What if we do pull it off? What do we have? Those who crafted this map had no interest whatsoever, could care less about our communities of interest. Care less. Senator from York, that's how you end up with York County and Williamsburg County, Senator from Williamsburg, being in the same congressional district. I don't know how many miles that is, but it's 120 or something like that, miles long. Oconee County, right there up in the mountains. Oconee County runs all the way into Richland County. Charleston County is my home county is really, I'm really concerned about its map. It runs from, on the coast from the border with North Carolina, and then just pretty much very low population areas along the coast and up into downtown Charleston and the Neck area. And no offense, Senator from Horry, but I think you would acknowledge we have a lot of different communities of interest. I mean, this accents is one of them, yeah. No one has a Charleston accent unless they live there, born there. But very, very different. And you can criticize this map in many other ways, but it is a map that has not had any input from the citizens of South Carolina. It has not had any input from the House of Representatives, no input from the South Carolina Senate. It's just handed down from above. And we spent copious amounts of time traveling the state, getting input from citizens about the maps. And we made significant changes from the original map in the process of receiving that information. We took it to heart. And so, if this map is adopted, there will be no end to the questions and complaints that we all will hear, because it was drawn by people who have no concept of the communities of interest around this state and what county feels connected with another county. What concerns are the same concerns, county to county. And of course, these precincts, there's a lot of split precincts. You can't really even know what the potential outcome of an election run on the basis of this map. It'd be hard to discern what it is. But I do know this: even if we do adopt this and we pass it, I think our state Supreme Court would strike it down. And you look at, and I'm looking at the concurring opinion of Judge Kittredge, League of Women Voters of South Carolina, versus our congressional map. We won in the U.S. Supreme Court. We won in the state Supreme Court. This is the South Carolina State Supreme Court opinion. It was handed down not too long ago in June 24th, 2025. This is in Kittredge's, Judge Kittredge and Judge Hill in their concurring opinion. I do not, however, read the court's decision as creating a categorical rule that all future claims of excessive partisan gerrymandering are beyond judicial review. They concluded it was beyond their review because this map was beyond their review. But this is Justice Kittredge, the Chief Justice, saying, I do not, however, read the court's decision as creating a categorical rule that all future claims of excessive partisan gerrymandering are beyond judicial review. I construe today's decision as cautious judicial deference, not indifference, meaning they're watching us. It remains conceivable that a future challenge may bring more fully developed constitutional violations with a discernible nexus to manageable judicial standards, thereby warranting judicial intervention. This is the Chief Justice saying, you go too far, you're going to get some intervention from us at the state Supreme Court level. And in his footnote, in the footnote to this section, Judge Kittredge and Hill say, to its credit, the South Carolina legislature has drawn our congressional district lines, the current ones we have, the ones that those from outside of this state are trying to get us to adopt. To its credit, South Carolina's legislature has drawn our congressional district lines to virtually ensure the current minority political party has representation in Congress, unlike some other states. And so this map will undo the premise of that footnote. And I think it's very likely that we will end up in federal court. We will also end up in state court as well, because Judge Kittredge and Hill have given us that forewarning, if you will. Thank you.